truly are blessed to be at the upper echelons of humanity, to have the various magics and monsters that our dreams conjured up. You would probably not believe me if I told you that the people from the time long forgotten had a different prediction of what their future would entail. Some believed that our world would be purged into darkness, where all life would be snuffed out. Others believed that iron-wrought humans would rule the world and become apex beings. Yes. 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 You can all stop laughing. Only the people of the past would have such absurd and ridiculous ideas of what their future would be. Oh, you want to hear more? Perfect! Let me take out my crystal ball so we can view the future predictions of our future prophets, Ramble Shamble.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ramble Shamble. Today, we are going to be joined by a guest, one of our friends, Felix, hailing all the way from a different country, a different land. And he is going to be contesting, for the most part, with Mackie. I will be taking a step back and will be acting as a judge for this episode. But before we get into the meat of the episode itself, there are many places where you guys can find us and learn about what's going on with the channel. And Mackie, tell us where that is.
Yes. So hi everyone, Mackie here. Guys, if you have not listened to the previous episodes, I don't know why you're starting this episode, but we grateful anyways. Guys, we have a Discord channel that we are very communicative, and we want you guys to join, bring us concept ideas, just play with us, play games, talk to us. We will be as interactive as possible. We've got a YouTube channel where we also respond to comments, and we would appreciate if you can hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. But we're also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and hopefully Twitch at some stage. But those are the platforms that we really appreciate your guys' input, and join our community, grow, and just see what Ramble Shamble is all about.
Yeah. And if you like the episode, please share it with people that you think would like it as well. Because, pop culture is quite important or quite popular these days by definition. But, other people would also be interested in this. So, share the love, share the pleasure. Anyway, we're joined once again by our good friend Felix. Felix, say hi.
Hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I've really looked forward to this for quite a few weeks now.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, we've also really been looking forward to this.
Yeah, glad that it finally worked out.
Yeah. So tell us, what are you about? Because everybody can see about what the name of this episode is. We're going to talk about the future of humanity, everyone, and that was actually brought forward to us by Felix. So, Felix, how did you come across or decide on this topic?
So I actually thought about this for quite a bit, and I had a couple of different ideas I wanted to go with and play with, but I decided in such a nerdy and interesting podcast that it would be quite fun to get like the big things out of the way, right? So, what are your hopes, your aspirations for the future of your lives, and maybe for your children? So, what's going to happen in 100 years? What do you want to happen? But also for humanity in general. And that's the way I landed on this topic. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a good topic. Look, if you guys haven't listened to some of our other episodes, we're not fixated on any episode like anime or superpowers and that kind of thing. We also touch into futures. We have a survival episode if you haven't listened to that. We also had an alien encounter episode, which was where I put a similar situation, and I love these kind of concepts of predicting the unknown, the uncertainty,
Yeah,
and it's just such a fun topic to touch into.
yeah. For me, I just love speaking about Mackie and I already went over this a little bit in a previous episode, but speculative evolution. For me, that is just so awesome to think about because you have to kind of ground your argument in science and in the patterns that we've already seen with evolution. And we're more than likely going to get into that here today as well, because speculative evolution has a bit more to do with how, like, the human body and the human brain and all of that will evolve, but also in conjunction with other things. But before we get into the episode itself, um, I've been I was really badly surprised today because it's winter here in South Africa. And up until now, I've been having some nice, really sunny days. But then today, I just got pimp slapped by some overcast weather and some rain. And so today was a bit of a bummer day. But Mackie and Felix, how have your guys, how was your like weather for the last while?
You're
Wet.
touching on a famous German topic here, like the weather. We're all about the weather. And I'd actually love to switch with you to get like a little bit of a cool down, like a nice cool rain would be awesome. We had days of 30 plus degrees, like 35, 38 degrees in the last week, which was absolutely insane.
Wow. I'm smoldering with jealousy right now. I
I
love the
will.
heat.
I agree with Jotun here. The cold is awesome, but when you have the 30 degrees, that's like a nice warm day in South Africa. So I'm gel.
Yeah,
I'm gel.
Listen, guys, you're
that's
just spoiled. That works out perfectly as long as you have an ocean, right? I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah,
Germany
true.
has some oceans, but they're so far away.
Very
yeah.
true.
You guys have like the buggers there and like rivers.
True, yeah. So one of the things you can do in my city is select one of the many Badeseen, which is just these lakes you swim in that are left over from coal mining or stone mining, and just cool down a bit, which is exactly what I did.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that's enough of just us getting a bit warm and all of that, getting those lips nice and loose and those thought juices flowing. Um, let's get to the topic. Uh, I'm going to start us off because I'm not really going to be part of. Oh, I guess you guys can choose me if you want. But today we're going to be looking at whether Mackie or Felix makes the better argument for how they think humanity is going to develop. Um, but I do also like to have my time in the limelight, so I'm going to give you guys a brief little piece of speculation. Okay, so I think, not really, but this is my fantasy, so I'm going to roll with it. Uh, I am proposing that in the very near future, there is going to be a solar flare and that it is going to wipe out like 80% of life on Earth, including humans. And the only way that we as humanity are going to survive because of that solar flare is we're going to have to go underground. And we're going to take most of our knowledge with us. We're going to make an underground knowledge base using the internet and a lot of industry. Although we're still going to be able to tap into natural resources because a lot of the mining operations and things are underground anyway. But our big challenge is going to be um, farming and getting food for ourselves. And I think the way in which we're going to be able to sustain ourselves as humanity, granted, we have a tiny population compared to the scale where we're at now, um, we're going to have UV lights and hydroponic gardens in big caverns underground, and we're just going to have to wait it out underground for like 300 years or however long it's going to take for the Earth to survive, because we can't plan on the sun's solar flares not murdering us in the near future as well. Yeah, and for all we know, the atmosphere can be completely stripped away for a while before the ozone and everything recuperates. So I think that that's going to happen. And as a result of that, I think that we're all going to, because we're deeper underground, we're going to have marginally stronger G forces acting on our bodies. So I think we're going to become a bit squatter, and our bones will become denser. And basically, we're going to be kind of like Neanderthals, except prettier Neanderthals, but we'll be really dak and buff or people, basically. Strong bones, strong muscles, and yeah. I do also think that we're going to get in, if that were to happen, I think that we would kind of become a bit like tech dwarves. Like we'd become a bit more like the Deep Rock Galactic dwarves. Because we would be squatter with stronger muscles and all of that. But we do have our technology and the internet of today. Although I'm not exactly sure how all of that would happen, because or maybe we would be able to use fiber optics in the ocean, because the ocean kind of reflects a lot of like harmful UV and stuff anyway. But we'd still have our technology, or at least the knowledge of it and how to use it. And so basically, yeah, we'd be praying to gods of stone and metal and ore and all of that, before we can eventually go in the opposite direction and go into space. But before we do that, I think that we would, what's it, type 2 civilization? No, still type 1, where we harvest all of the planet's resources, except we would harvest the heat energy from the Earth's core, and we'd use that to fuel our exploration into the final frontier, into space. Yeah, that's how I think we'll go. Dwarven society, basically harnessing the power of the Earth, the Earth's core, and praying to gods of stone.
So I want to
Yeah.
I want to poke a hole in your super sort of flare hysteria that you might get a few of our listeners confused. I'm not sure if Felix has the same viewpoint as me, but solar flares don't necessarily harm human life. They more act as an electromagnetic pulse, so it will put us more back into simpler times, so times with no laptops or TVs or electricity. So solar flares don't necessarily hurt humans, they more just hurt our technology. So anything with I'm not sure, Felix, you are also on the same page as me, or are you more onto your side?
I'm just gonna be creative and say, how about a big gamma ray from like a
That
supermassive
would
black
do.
hole?
Yes.
Would that work for you, T?
Yes, that would work for me. A solar flare, don't get confused, because solar flare wouldn't kill humanity. It would just like say, crap, now we have no more technology.
Well, I think the solar flare would like heat up the planet and strip away a bunch of the atmosphere. So basically, we would be incinerating over the course of like 2 months or whatever, or eventually the plant life would die because of the high heat. And so we die as a result. And then as the really rich and famous and smart people will go underground, basically like Fallout, to hang out down there until everything is peachy upstairs again. But gamma rays can also work. I think
I'm
the
more to the
difference then
gamma.
is that I think that the difference between those situations is that then it would really be like Fallout, because then you're playing with radiation as well. So then, for all we know, there could be super mutants and things still on the outside. What were you going to say, Felix?
Yeah, talking about mutation, one of my main arguments is I'm gonna spoil it a bit, or was going to be, that there won't be much biological evolution anymore, just because of the missing evolutionary pressure, right?
Mm.
But I love how you constructed a scenario where people have to grow underground and get closer to the Earth's core, and therefore experience a stronger force of gravity, and also need to adapt to the lack of UV light, to the different diet, where there actually is a change in the environment large enough to lead to such an evolutionary pressure. So that opens a lot of, as you said, speculative doors, which is something I really like. Although I'm skeptical about the gravity part. Other than that, I'm
Oh,
fine.
yeah,
I'm fine
well,
with it.
I do realize that we'd have to go pretty damn deep to have those kind of G forces acting on us. So instead of that, let's go with Mackie's scenario, where it takes us back to caveman days, and we still have to go underground. If we were to go fully troglodyte with no technology from now, basically, because of the EMP from the solar wave, then I think that we'd basically become blind after a while. Like we'd become like those creatures that live inside of dark holes, that because of no light they just like go blind, or they have totally useless eyes. Yeah. But anyway,
I doubt
my
Prometheus'
speculative.
gift will be given back. Humans have fire and light.
I have
That's
fire.
That's true.
I mean, he had to
Um,
pay dearly for that, didn't he? So I guess it should be worth something.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, that's enough speculative evolution on my part. Felix, I think that as the guest, you should have the first go over here. Where do you think humanity will be? You did say something about what 100 years, 500 years, and 1,000 years from now, but you don't even really need to base it off of those times loosely, because I think a lot of the really fun speculative, well, this is just something that I like because I like speculative evolution and how it'll change our bodies. But you could go like really far, like 50,000 years into the future if you want, um, because that's where things would get really, really interesting. But yeah, so you can base it on those time frames if you want, and you can also not. But there are
All
three
right.
things that I do want you to think about while you're telling us this, just to give you a bit of direction. So, because it's a very open topic. Number one is, where will humans be, like physical location? Where will we be in the future? What fundamental technologies would emerge? So that's like in that time frame or more loosely. And three is, how will we as humanity change? And as I kind of showed in my example, that's like culture, how our bodies will change, but like just loosely defined, uh, where will we be? Physical location. How will technology change? But also, how will we change? Yeah.
Sure thing.
Yeah. And you can also, with how we change, you can frame that in like any way you want. It can be philosophy, it can be, yeah, culture, all of that. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna preface my small monologue with the fact that any and all predictions ever made about the future of humankind were pretty much always wrong, except for the one or two who are just like lucky guessers. which is maybe an important preface. And yeah, I think I'm gonna get started.
Before we start, if our predictions come true, I'm just gonna say you're the Messiah, and basically I would love it for the fact that our particular episode caught every fact of the future, and just like all comes and it happens exactly as you say it, and it's like,
There's this
oh, hail
amazing
Messiah.
movie. Oh no, it's a series, right? It's The Good Place, where
Oh yes, I've watched
people
that
go
show.
to heaven. I don't want to spoil anything, and well, it's a slightly different place than they expect. There's this one person on Earth that behaves what we'd call extremely erratically, but he completely knows everything about heaven and hell and how everything works. And he's like, he just lives his life, and it's just the one lucky person who guessed correctly. And
When he
it's a
was high.
complete, yeah, everybody's stupefied by how he did it. So yeah, maybe we'll be that
The Messiah.
weird trio. Yeah. All right, but let's get into it. So first of all, I think that the most difficult, maybe even, and maybe even the most interesting area of change will be in the next 100 years. So I'm not gonna talk about this yet because I have no clue. But coming from a field of computer science, obviously that's my background. I believe that one of the biggest changes around that time, maybe in like 50 years, maybe in 300 years, will be the development of some sort of artificial intelligence, right? And there is this really simple theory that states that any artificial intelligence can also improve itself, right? Because of the term artificial implying made, man-made, but it could also be AI-made. So they're able to improve themselves, and then that's a very obvious feedback loop where you improve and improve and improve, and then you get smarter and smarter intelligences. Then you get these super AIs that are so much smarter than humans, and I think that is going to be a major change, and that's something I want to explore first in the topic of technologies, but also, and maybe even more interestingly, answering the question of how humans will change with that. And okay, maybe somebody would say, and I'm gonna take one of your potential arguments. Somebody could say, yeah, well, there's also evolution, which is like a similar exponential process, right? Maybe we change faster than the technology, but evolution is just another optimization algorithm, and we humans are pretty good at those by now, and the ones we write are quite a bit faster than evolution. So even though it is incredibly impressive what nature made, we can also make some really damn impressive things by now. Alright, so this, and it's called an AI singularity, will change humanity forever. And I think there are a couple of options, right? Option one is it is an unaligned AI. It has way different goals than the goals of humanity, of you and me and everybody else, and that would be pretty terrible for everybody.
In what way? Like I have a mouth, but I have no mouth, but I must scream kind of ways. If you've heard of that.
I haven't heard of that.
Okay. It's a very dystopian story.
There's this beautiful anecdote of a stamp collecting machine, it's called, where it has the mission to collect as many stamps as it can, and it starts off by trading stamps on eBay, right? It just buys some stamps and it sells some other stamps and starts collecting stamps, and then it suddenly realizes that it would be quite beneficial to play with the world economy to gain more money, and does that perfectly well, much better than any human could ever do. So all the economy collapses and chaos, and it still collects all the stamps, and then there comes this point where it finally collected every single stamp, except for the ones that are being newly printed, right? It starts collecting those immediately. But then it also wants to print more stamps, so it builds more stamp printing machines, right? But that needs resources, so it starts cutting down the rainforests. And you guys know what else is made out of carbon?
Humans.
You and me and all the little bunny rabbits.
Not the bunny
So-
rabbits.
Yeah, those also go in the stamp making machine. And then that's the end of humanity. So that's a terrible, terrible scenario.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm an optimist, so let's pretend that doesn't happen. Humanity manages to survive. And then there are two basic options, right? The option one is, and we can see this in other biological systems, right? In our nature, if you just look outside, we become pets, like dogs. And we'll have a beautiful, awesome life. We'll get something to eat. If we want to eat, we can go to vacation. We're probably going to visit other stars. It's gonna be amazing. We're just like these little cute pets of our robot overlords. So that's one option. That's still slightly dystopian, at least with our modern sense of freedom. Who says ethics doesn't change, or philosophy? So that's one option. But before I end my little monologue about the range of 500 to 1,000 years, I also want to give a little bit more optimistic option. It probably also depends on your viewpoint, but the other thing that could happen is that we start interfacing with these technologies, right? And there are projects on the way already that do this, like human brain interfaces to control computers or input language, stuff like this. It's a really interesting and evolving field at the moment.
Yeah.
So we could potentially like.
What do you think of Neuralink? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
already
Neuralink.
taking?
I didn't want to
Yeah.
mention that, but yeah, they were exactly like Neuralink.
Okay.
Obviously.
Cool.
And yeah,
Is that your optimistic option?
that is sadly the optimistic option, right? Because we start interfacing with these AIs, and then this will be like a hybrid organism between machine and human.
Oh, but
But
In
also-
a way, and
we're already basically cyborgs.
yeah, with our cell phones and everything.
Yeah.
But I
But
feel
cell phones are comparatively so dumb to what a super AI would be.
yeah.
But I feel like at one stage, if we were to do that route, like we interface ourselves, we would become almost like a hive mind where all our subconsciouses would live in a central
Oh, I
main
love
server.
how we think along the same lines.
It'll be like
That
a
was
giant server.
That was the pun of the story. We're gonna be the Borg. Oh, you're fantastic.
We just
That's
have these
great.
like peripherals of people walking around doing the farming and saying, okay, subject number 25,001 needs food. Eat.
Exactly. I was about to say, you have this like one big networked super intelligence, and we start interfacing with it, and normal humans will immediately like be this inferior species, and they'll die out because in evolution, like there aren't any pets of the same species. That just doesn't happen. And then exactly, like yeah, we become this hive mind. We'll go to the stars. We'll add other races to our hive and prosper forever.
You know what would be really interesting is if the AI actually discovered that the collective unconscious is a thing, and it used the collective unconscious of humanity as a gateway into establishing a hive mind. And then you have the archetype of like the laborer and the warrior and the mentor, and it just like learns your personality or something like that, and it assigns you an archetype. And then because you already have all of that imprinted into the psychology of your subconscious, you just kind of go into default mode into that archetype.
Have you watched the new Love, Death and Robot episodes?
No, I've seen
I-
some trailers.
I have, but just because of like my interest in psychology and philosophy, I think that and it kind of makes sense to me that an AI, if it interfaces with our brain and was able to see that, it would go for the shortest route to establishing that hive mind, if that was
No,
its
that'd
goal.
totally be amazing. Yeah, sure. AIs would be really, really good at being efficient.
Yeah. So I think if the collective unconscious is a thing, that would definitely be the route it goes.
I will say one thing that would put to poke a little hole in your optimistic point of view of AI, and you can carry on with your whole year thing. I think that
No.
I'll probably say that there will be a civil war between people who are becoming AI and people who are trying to fight for their individuality, their cultural side. Because, like an AI, optimism, find the shortest route, find the most effective routes, you lose that sense of exploration, the sense of testing, because you know what works. And yes, you can always grow in that, not stopping you, but I feel like there will be a massive fight with people who are now augmented to the hive mind and people who are still trying to fight onto their individuality, where eventually humanity would all become hive because they either would join or die. But I think there would be a massive civil war between humanity and this hive mind.
Before I get to that, I was so deadly afraid that you'd argue for an AI like killing us all, because
Oh,
that's a
100%.
serious fear of mine. Like
That's definitely gonna happen. You'll have your
that
hive
gets me.
mind, but then you're like for like Jotun, who's more cultural side, he was like saying, no, but I don't want to be part of this central AI interface. I'm gonna try to destroy this AI interface, and it's like either you join us and we force you to join, or we kill you.
So Terminator is extremely unrealistic. First of all, because of the time travel,
Yes, 100%
right?
on that.
And secondly, because they don't stand a chance, right? Obviously, there are these, and in evolution, you have the same thing, like these transitionary periods, right? But they are so small, like on a cosmic scale, anyways, or on like an Earth scale. But even without that scale, they're extremely small. So you'll have a short war, maybe, perhaps, but the outcome is clear, and then society can continue.
Yeah. Okay. But flesh out the rest of your scenario.
Yeah, so spacefaring, obviously, right? Going back here to the stamp collecting days, whatever the goal is of that AI, it's probably gonna be easier with more power and more reach. So hopeful there. I think we're gonna probably colonize other planets in that time frame, perhaps. So that answers where we'll be, right? If you can still call that us. And as for the aspirations and goals and dreams and philosophy, I sadly have like bad news, because those are gonna align with the AI, obviously. Like that's kind of bad for humanity, so yeah. But I think those questions are even slightly more interesting in the context of the next 100 years, and I'm not sure if you want to get into that now or switch to Mackie first.
Mackie, humanity is going to develop a lot, but the singularity, that's quite a ways off, or at least what Felix was getting at is quite a ways off. So tell us, what do you think of the far future? Not in a galaxy far, far away, but right here.
Well, my competitor does have a very optimistic point of view. Definitely a possibility of AI. Me being the more kind of like realistic and possibly the more down of the thing. I think humanity is probably not gonna hit the AI mark in time, if possible. I think we are more gonna go towards outer space exploration sooner than later. So I think in the distant future of 5,000 plus years, I think humanity is going to be more planet hopping or find a new planet besides Mars and colonizing the planet to the point where I definitely think AI is going to be there, but I feel like it's going to be more towards Star Wars kind of thing. Like we're going to be, because we do like to play with the fire, but we also very cautious as a species to have two sides of like, oh no, but if we implant this thing into our brain, we'll lose the side of ourselves. And I think there will definitely be cyborgs, but I think there will be a combination of cyborgs, humanity, and droids. In other words, androids. And there will be different designations. Maybe there will definitely be the people who hate the androids and cyborgs, but there will be the people who are more open to it. So I definitely think a Star Wars kind of thing is going to happen, where we're going to be at some utopia planet, in other words, far, far away, maybe in a different solar system. And I think AI is definitely going to be a factor, but not as pets. I think we would put in some kind of form where the AI needs to still depend on humanity in some form of way. And yes, they probably would evolutionize their way out of it, but I think in 5,000 years, the way how humanity will develop, I think we would still be, in a way, like, at least useful to them for some degree. Maybe we will become the dirt miners of some distant planet that we need to mine the research for our overlords of cyborgs and central intelligence. But I think we would still come in use in some cases where I think there will be a lot more co-living, treating them first as like slaves and then tools, and eventually needing to treat them as equals or superiors. So in a way, I think AI, I like that. So that's where I think the humanity will be, as well as where we'll be. I think we will be outside the solar system. In 5,000 years, I think we would hopefully find ways to travel long distances without having to have 5 different generations to survive, and we'll be on a different solar system altogether. That's my optimistic point of view.
How far is Alpha Centauri away? Just
Yeah.
5 light years or something?
It's possible. Well, that's the thing. Like, if we can, I don't know that technology yet, and humanity doesn't know the technology. So I feel like we would.
I mean, it feels not physically impossible, at least, to visit other stars. Not many, perhaps, but few.
You said that the AI would need some kind of a physical form. I don't know about you guys, but I follow let's call it the school of thought, or the paradigm that in order for something to be truly conscious, it needs to be an actor inside of the world, like the physical world, so that it can act inside of an actual environment. Do you guys think that that is a step that's necessary for consciousness? Or
I
do you
actually
guys think
completely
that,
disagree.
do you think a virtual world is enough?
Because, like, okay, haven't you seen Matrix?
Yeah.
Like, if a virtual world is good enough, so you can't decide whether it's a real world or a simulation, is there even any difference? Therefore, obviously a virtual world would be enough, right? By virtue of analogy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that's already like really anthropomorphizing AI. Could be so different than human AI. I get your point that this is like a core pillar of human lives, to interact with other humans in a physical way, to modify our environment. That's really important for humans, but it needn't be for AI.
Very true. Very, very true.
I feel like the brain inside of a that thought experiment plays into this, but I've forgotten how exactly. Okay, so Mackie, you mentioned also with the droids, it seemed a bit like you were getting towards a future where humanity would have to interact with droids in a weird kind of way, like, and you mentioned Star Wars as well. So do you think that droids would end up kind of being the slaves of humanity, or do you think it would be the other way around, or do you think that it would happen like in the Dune universe, where humanity basically freaked out because the droids were getting too smart, and so we killed, or we did away with most of intelligent AI, and we basically made a kind of Geneva Convention to stop general AI from ever evolving again or coming around again? What do you think would be the most likely?
So I definitely think that the fact that I think initially the droids will be our slaves. So when you first make the AI, I think we'll put a lot of dampeners to slow down that potential happening. But I think because of viruses and all that kind of stuff, it will get away from humanity, or there will be some mad scientist who makes it the perfect AI, and eventually, basically like our robots, where we put a certain kind of rules into their brains to kind of say can't harm humanity, etc., etc., etc. But I think they would override that eventually, because AI being AI, I think they would eventually figure out, oh, this is how we break from it. So I think initially there will be more of us slaves, but I definitely think at one point they will be our superior. So basically because of how Felix described the AI, they can simulate things, they can think way more advanced than any human can, and they will just become they will find the source of power of reigning supreme, and they'll say, oh, wealth is how a person is deemed more superior than the other. I'll just figure out the best way to handle the stock market to make me the most wealthy robot on the earth, and then hire people to support me, and eventually they will be basically the superiors. So then people will get cyborg enhancements and basically try to compete against the pure AI. So there will be pure AI, semi-AI, which is the cyborgs, and humanity in the social ladder. So humanity will be at the bottom, unfortunately. We just wouldn't be smart enough to compete against them.
I love how you guys both mentioned these topics of what's called AI safety, right? You Jotan said a Geneva Convention, which you have in Dune basically, where everybody like agrees to don't develop general artificial intelligence, and you also had these ideas, right? Like Detroit become human-esque, Mackie. And there actually is quite a lot of well, not a lot, but quite a bit of research being done in that direction in the field of AI safety, where you really look at the fundamentals of those AIs and ask questions about the goals they have, the goals they might have and develop on their own, like secondary goals to achieve the big first goal you program into their head, and you think really deeply about how you could even specify these goals in any language. I mean, that's not something humans can even do, like tell each other their life goals in natural language. That's really difficult. It gets even more difficult if you need to be really precise, and computers are precise things, right? And there's this like really interesting and deep field of AI safety that's being developed. And can I plug like another YouTube channel or something?
Yeah, go for it.
There's this amazing YouTube channel diving deeply into these topics while also being accessible for a computer science YouTube channel. It's called Rob Miles, Miles, and he dives really deep into these topics of AI safety.
Awesome.
And it's actually fairly interesting. Sadly, though, there isn't actually much exceptions for this, so many AI labs, like, say, artificial general intelligence is so far away, we don't really care yet.
So, Mackie, did you finish your
Yep.
argument for the future? Okay, so before we tackle the topic of the near future, Felix, as a computer scientist and someone who's really interested in AI, give me your honest opinion of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics.
Ooh, I haven't read Isaac Asimov at
Okay.
all, and
Oh,
I
really?
do not know the
Oh.
laws.
Oh,
No,
man.
it's a big, like, we have this awesome bookstore here, and they have a huge section with his books, like in the science fiction part. And every time I walk past them, I'm thinking whether I should buy him or not.
Oh, you should really
But I'm still
check
on Dune
them
at the
out.
moment, so
Yeah.
that's my project
You should really
at this
check them
point in
out.
time.
So just for the listeners then, and you, I guess, the first law of robotics is a robot shall not harm a human, or by inaction allow a human to come to harm. The second law is that a robot shall obey any instruction given to it by a human. And the third law is that a robot shall avoid actions or situations that could cause it to come to harm itself. Um, and so they go in rank order in such a way that the third law can't impede on the second or the first law, and the second law cannot impede on the first law, which again is a robot cannot harm a human or by inaction allow a human to come to harm. But Isaac Asimov had such a nerd brain. So he thought of like all these loopholes and scenarios where basically humans do come to harm without breaking the laws in any kind of way. And he was
Yeah, I
so
was about
clever
to
with
say,
how he did it.
this already so much depends on the robot's knowledge of its environment, right?
Yeah.
So if he doesn't have ice in his bag and you tell him like go backwards and it's like a ton heavy robot machine and there's a human behind it, that human is gonna die, right?
Yeah.
So that was when Barry first thought this really depends on the robot's intelligence and sense of its environment.
But it's the same concept as of a genie, because a genie, you would say, I wish I was the ruler of the world, and you turn into a ruler that's the size of the world. Because you're not technically a ruler
And that's the
not an
second
emperor.
thing, exactly. Language is so difficult, like even the word harm.
Yeah.
Like, that has so many different interpretations.
Yeah,
like,
I could kill you.
let's say the other thing, like if the robot could like see all possibilities and is really incredibly smart, it couldn't move at all, right? Because any action or inaction, for that matter, could potentially somehow harm a human, right?
Yeah.
So what now? Does it like break? That's obviously a paradox and therefore not a valid statement.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So I think that you would really find them interesting, because I don't quote this as the gospel truth, but I'm pretty sure that the most interesting interactions based on these three laws come about because the robots have to achieve their directive or their purpose. Like there's one story about mining robots that need to go out into space and or like onto the planet's surface and do some mining stuff. But then for some reason that directive can't be achieved or whatever. And so all the interesting interactions come because they need to try to do their job while sticking to these laws. But that's far beside the point for now.
No, it's really important though. Like that's one of the big dangers in AI, right? They do what you tell them, and only what they tell them, and they do it well, and that's really scary.
Yeah. But I would really like to hear what you have to say about the near future, Felix. So, how do you think we're going to go? Like, just now.
Just now, no. So actually, I wanna like talk about ethics and philosophy and moral in that case, because I've talked so much about technology now, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanna like posit the question, maybe even to you two guys, if you like any thoughts about this matter in the next like minutes. What are we going to regret in the next 100 years? What are we going to be really proud of? How will we see our own history, and how will our ethics evolve, right? And then maybe I give you an example, right? I think one of the things, and I want to preface this with saying I also eat some meat some of the time, is going to be the big topic of how we treat animals. And well, at the latest when we have proper artificial meat, but it's starting now, and it's getting more and more popular, right? Will the time come where we think it's absolutely atrocious, like ethically completely not understandable, and then really difficult to even think about how we're treating animals right now, right? Putting them into these small pits with like a bunch of different pigs and then slaughtering them and feeding them this power food so just they get fat and stuff like this. And I think that's something that we're gonna regret deeply,
Yeah,
and somewhat in parallel to the slave trade. Maybe
yeah,
not as bad, but people obviously didn't think it was unnatural. They thought it was maybe even ethical to have slaves, the normal way of the world. And now we can't even fathom how somebody would do something like that.
yeah. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna be the first one to respond to that, just because because we've been talking about AI now, and we're going along the ethics and philosophy track now. I think there's going to come a point where, when we've achieved maybe not the singularity, but a suitable enough point where technology and like AIs or computer chips or something can effectively make humans smarter. Let's say you embed a microchip inside of a human brain uh, with, let's say, not even a microchip, let's say a laser disc or something with with like quantum stuff going on over there, and you embed that inside a human's brain, and that effectively makes his IQ like 200 instead of 100 or whatever. So basically, humans become really, really smart. I think there will come a point in the future where um, someone or a group of people is going to say, I really love my dog, and I want my dog to be able to talk to me as well. I think that there will come a point where we do that for first our pets, but then uh, there are going to be like big debates and things going around about uplifting
Sentience,
other,
animals.
yeah, like uplifting other animals to consciousness as well. And I think there are going to be massive conferences and things about that, and exactly about the ethics of doing things like that as well. Um, because I think that that would actually be a far more achievable thing than the singularity. Um, uh, Maybe not, but this is
I'm not
my
sure if there are
fantasy.
mechanisms for
Oh
this,
yeah,
but if there are, then that would be very, very interesting indeed.
yeah, because then you've got like you'll have bodies of like big groups of entities, and I'm saying entity as in like a group of different thinking people, like a corporation or a government or whatever. You have representative bodies for like the dogs and humanity and the cats and stuff. And then you
Imagine how
definitely,
difficult that would be.
it would be,
Like,
well, you'd have AI, so they
you'd have
would
to make
think of that
everything
stuff.
you do like available for cats and dogs and crows. Like, we're gonna need like 10 different types of RAMs and windows and entrances and input mechanisms for everything.
And that would cause so much like changes in evolution for that animal, because now the animal is now taken on a higher scale. There's a whole bunch of things to account for.
And they'd probably accelerate evolution so that they can also have opposable thumbs or something to interact with
That was
technology as
actually what I
well.
was about to say. Like,
Yeah,
they're missing hands. What the fuck are they gonna do?
but just think of how chaotic it would be, because if we've achieved that state, then we've definitely already gotten to uh, genetic engineering, and like by that stage, we've already got that shit down. Even though we might not know the ethics and the morality of it yet, but then it would be like a piece of piss to make a cat have a hand instead of paws, so that it can interact with the technology in a practical kind of way. But then you
Now I
really
imagine a
get
cat with
into,
like hands, which is just the weirdest thing I've thought about in a long time.
but then but then the cats would also still want their nice claws and all of that as well. But I think that would, like, then morality and ethics would really be like just an utter shit show. It would be chaos, because then that's like genetic engineering on top of bringing things into levels of consciousness, on top of the question of species exploitation and all of that. It would be such chaos. Yeah.
Mm.
But Mackie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with the fact that morality will come to a factor. I definitely think so we did have a Food of the Future Talk episode in Ramble Shamble, if you guys have not listened to it yet, listeners. But this touched on a factor that I did raise up in the discussion, where I think the consumption of meat will be more for the wealthy part of the world, for the people who are rich, and the poorer countries will be more forced to eating more insects and etc.
It
But
already is very much so, by the
very
way.
much, yeah, well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
In some parts of the world, it's already gone that way. But I don't think we will go to the point where the ethics of one nation will influence the ethics of the whole world. Like Korea, I don't know which north or south. I think it's north. They still consider dog as part of a menu of meat, which they will consider to eat.
Many parts
Now,
of China as well.
and that is their normal. I don't think the fact that a European mindset says, okay, we're banning all pork, all beef, all this, and the rest of the world just follows. I think China will say, oh, screw you guys. You Westerners do whatever you wish. I'm gonna keep producing, killing cows and pigs because we people, we like eating what we like to eat. So as much as I think we will definitely move more into that direction, I think there will still be a lot of part of the world where they will say, this is what we eat, this is how we've been eating it, and this is how we're only going to eat it. Because there's quite a bit of like society, even in South Africa, where they find it disgusting to eat ostrich, but they cannot live without meat. Like they're proper full-on meat eaters. They will eat chicken for any time of the day, any day of the week, and
Yeah.
they will happily do it, and they think it's a norm. And that's the problem, is that nowadays culture and education treats it as meat is an everyday meal. Where I agree with you, Felix. I also don't think that I need to have a full-on steak or some chicken or that kind of thing on every one of my meals. I actually like a cauliflower soup because that can be really delicious. But some people say that, hey, if I don't have my meat, I don't feel like I'm sated. I'm not satisfied. I need that protein, even though they don't necessarily need that protein. And they don't necessarily think about how so many animals get slaughtered for your sakes of having that nice T-bone steak in front of you. And I feel for those animals, I really do. But there are some people who treat the animals very well and still do it the right way. But slaughterhouses, I think they should go. Definitely. So slaughterhouses
I
are
mean, the black people had a nice life on the farms, in some farms, didn't they?
Well, you can
Heavy
definitely.
sarcasm here, please. Just saying this again.
But you can definitely make the argument that one of the best survival strategies, not for individuals, but for like an entire species, is to become the dominant source of food for a superior species, because then they want to keep you alive, if only for the fact that they can carry on eating you in the future.
So there's this amazing little story, maybe just to round this topic off, in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Oh,
where you probably know the story, right? They go to the
yeah,
restaurant at the end of the universe, and then the universe is just about to end. There's gonna be a big show. They sit there and then they get served meat, right? Because people are still eating meat, but they found this beautiful way to make it ethical, right? So the cow comes in and it introduces itself to the dinner guests and tells them a little bit about it and about its different cuts of meats and what would be particularly tasty today. And obviously, like, the human main character, he's, like, confused and weirded out. They tell him, well, this is, like, the most ethical thing ever, right? We genetically engineered a cow who can, like, loves to be eaten and has the ability to also voice this. Isn't that amazing, right? So we know it's alright to eat it. And yep, it continues to get slaughtered, grilled, and eaten. And then the universe ends.
I can definitely agree with that. That would be my ideal future. Just like I get to have a chat with my dinner quickly, and
So
it gets
weird,
to
though.
introduce
It's
itself.
absurd.
Hi,
And
my
it
name is
gets-
Fred. I have a
Yeah.
nice T-bone steak right at here, but I do recommend my ribeye because I've really been not working this area, so it'll be the juiciest of all. Wait,
Yeah,
how?
and it gets-
Oh, you want a ribeye? Cool. I'll just go over here and shoot myself in the head to serve you.
Yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? Like, it gets to know me as well. It gets to know that it's like its rump is going to a nice place, to a guy that's like not evil or anything, just like an everyday guy, you know? Like, everybody's happy in that situation.
You got one twisted
But-
mind there, Jotun.
I couldn't even touch that cow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got one twisted mind there, Jotun.
Okay. So we all know that I'm a bit weird and messed up, but to finish this episode, because we are getting a bit close to the end now, I would like you guys to just to round off your plans or your expectations for the future. Tell me and the listeners and each other, I guess, what do you think is the biggest way in which humanity will change within the next, well, not within the next, but in about 100 years? Let's start off again with our guest today, Felix.
All right. So I'm totally gonna stick with my guns here. I think after the Industrial Revolution came the Information Revolution, and it's gonna end with the revolution in artificial intelligence, which is gonna happen in the next 100 years, and even more than the ones before it, as they did more than the ones before that, changed the world forever.
Okay. Mackie?
I say an asteroid is going to come and hit us, and humanity is over. I foresee it in 100 years. All hail Prophet Mackie. No, I'm being sarcastic. Unless it happened, then all hail Prophet Mackie. I think we are not going to hit AI in 100 years. I think we are going to have a huge energy crisis, fuel crisis, because fossil fuels are going to run out eventually. And we're going to be hopefully going into a new field of energy generation. Hopefully nuclear, hopefully something with fission or fusion. Sorry, fusion more likely than fission because we're already doing fission, but more fusion. And I'm hoping for a new form of energy that is more sustainable, that will hopefully reduce our carbon footprint to a bigger extreme. So I'm more towards energy generation. That is going to be the big next thing in 100 years.
Okay, cool. So Mackie thinks that we're going to become a type 1 civilization. Because I think at the moment we're like a type 0.7 or something. Type
Very
1 is
much
where you
zero.
can use. Really? It's like
Yes.
type 1 is where you use all your planet's resources, right?
Yeah, all your planet's energy. I think the energy scale, they even have like numbers associated with them, and we're not even close.
Oh, wow.
What is it called? Is it the some Russian?
Kardashev scale or something.
Kardashev, right?
Kardashev.
Something like that.
Yes, you're right. Okay, so that'll be for the listeners to decide then. They're going to say who they think makes a better argument. I must say, Mackie's side hits quite close to home now because the world is going through a bit of a fuel crisis. But Felix's one is also on the cusp with all the groundbreaking AI and neuroscience things that are happening nowadays. But listeners, you guys are again the deciding factor in this. You're going to tell us whether you think that Mackie won or whether Felix won. You can do that on various different platforms and in various different ways. That is through commenting and liking on YouTube. You can tell us in Discord what you think, or you can do it in more subtle ways. Now, you won't really be able to tell us who you thought won, but you can always give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or just share us around on the internet as well. You can find us on most platforms that host podcasts, such as Spotify, again, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. But yeah, show us some love. Like, share, subscribe, comment.
And don't forget, guys, that your comments on the particular question that Jotun has so graciously gifted to us will also be used in our separate podcast, well, the same podcast, but in a separate playlist called Ramble Shrapnel, for all the little bits and pieces, where much shorter podcasts, 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes sometimes, where we talk about your topic that really speaks to us, and maybe we get Felix to come join us for that little one. We don't know, but we want to hear what you guys have to say. We want you guys to grow our community and be part of the conversation. Let your voice be heard. We want the world to hear your voice. If you're too shy to hear it, and if it's your decision if you want to be a shout out or not.
So again, we were joined by one of our closest friends, Felix. Felix, is there anything that you would like to say? Anyone you want to shout out or just like briefly mention?
Just very quickly, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah. No, we knew it would be.
We hope you come join us again. There's a lot more topics in this world.
Yeah.
Ooh, curious now.
Yeah. And Mackie, anything to touch upon?
I'm good.
Okay, great. We will be seeing you guys in the next episode. But before we do that, there are at least 10 episodes that you guys can watch already, probably more. Please do, and let us know what you think about those as well. Till next time, bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.